The minimum lot size for one of these systems is 80,000 square feet, which is just shy of 2 acres. And say, for instance, you had and this is that's with a water source on the property, like a well. If you have a water source off the property, you have that because you don't have to contend with the separation from wells, and that's 40,000 square feet. Okay. We also have a minimum lot size exemption. So if you can't meet Appendix 75A of the State Sanitary Code, which is basically the rules that the state set forth for septic design and regs, and as far as how they're put in and what needs to be done. What you can do is you can hire your own engineer, and if they can meet meet the 75A standards, then we'll allow the septic to go in. One thing I'll also mention too, that I don't want to slide on here is that, say for instance, you had a really good perking soil, and you could do a conventional septic system, which is like a standard leach field. That would be basically built with soils like sands and gravels. You have those square footages that I mentioned earlier. It'd be 40,000 square feet for a well on the property, with a well on the property, and 20,000 for if you had, say, for instance, public water down here, or a well in an adjacent property. Okay. Let's see. So the replacement septic system sequence is basically the same as a new construction, except a lot of times on replacement septic systems, you can't meet all of 75A standard, meaning separation distance, because there's already existing wells and buildings and so forth. So you do the best what you have to work with. You try to meet all those if you can, all the separation distances. But typically, if you can't, you try to get the septic far enough away from a well. And you can also use other alternatives, like, well, I'll kind of talk about that in a little bit here. Okay. Come on. Why is this not going now? There we go. Okay, so I mentioned earlier, conversions are examples of a conversion, or tearing down a building and building a new place, removing like an old mobile home, installing a new mobile home or house. All the aspects of 75A need to be adhered to. If you're increasing the waste load, if Appendix 75A cannot be adhered to, then the DOH at Hornell has to permit the septic system. It's out of our hands. We can't permit it. Okay, conversion sequences are kind of similar. You call our office. We'll verify the septic records to make sure that what's there for the septic system, it fits to what their project is. So say for instance, we designed a 3-bedroom septic system prior to this tear down. It's already existing. If they're putting a new 3-bedroom in, you're doing a like for like, so you're not increasing the waste load, but we do have to have a inspection of that septic, make sure it's functioning. And that's why you get a hold of your septic hauler, and I'll meet them out there to pump the tank out and also look at the septic system to make sure it's functioning okay. And then I'll give a certificate of compliance, and I'll send that a copy over to Jason so he knows that the septic's good to go for the new building. Okay. So campers and RVs, we get a lot of questions about those. We do allow a holding tank to be put in. And for the simple fact that a camper is not considered a permanent structure. If they have it registered for the through the DMV as far as like a movable object, then we do allow to have them have a holding tank, and we permit the holding tank if it, one that's put in the ground, and they have to make sure obviously it's functioning and so forth. There's also, you can have composting toilets. You can actually have composting toilets in a house if you wanted to. What that does, it gives you a credit for the septic design as far as the waste load. Instead of using 110 gallons of wastewater per day per bedroom, you drop it down to 75 because you don't have all that extra sewage going into your septic system. You can also have incinerating toilets. They do the same thing as, you know, you don't have to contend with, the solid waste from the toilet, so you can knock down the gallons per day for the septic design. A privy or an outhouse, we don't allow just a pit in the ground. You have to put it, basically you could build one right on top of a holding tank. It's a contained vessel, and then you could, clean it out as needed. And also some people will want to have I've done this many times where people want to have a septic system in the future, just in case they ever want to build a house. It's there, then they can connect to it. And also if they're using the camper all summer, um, it could be expensive constantly pumping the tank out. Probably like about $350 or so per pump out. Okay. So say for instance, you want to sell your house in Schuyler County and you're on a septic system. If the part of the sales agreement is to have an inspection on a septic system, our office has to do it. That involves, my coworker does most of them. That's what he does. But basically what needs to happen is you fill out some applications to indicate what needs to be done. If you want to have a flow test on a well, you just want the septic inspected. We also offer water quality sampling. Um, and then what they'll do is they'll schedule a tank pump out and inspection with the pumper. He'll go out there, do a dye test prior to the pumping. And that what the dye does, it verifies a couple things. It verifies that the plumbing is hooked to the tank. So if you open a tank and you see the dye in there, you're good. Another thing they'll do is if we don't have records of it, we'll go down in the basement just to make sure there's no sinks going out to like a dry well not connected to the septic system. All the waste has to go to a tank. Um, and then also when the test the next day is conducted, he'll verify that there's no dye coming up into the yard and obviously indicating there's a problem with the septic system. Um, so if everything's good to go, we don't have to do any septic designs or replacement of tanks or anything like that. A certificate of compliance is issued. So for the lawyers, so that's part of their forms they need for when they have their closing on the property. Let's see. Okay, so here's a little bit more about that. So only in New York State, DEC licensed hauler can pump the tanks out. There's multiple guys around here to do it. Um, we also have to obviously be on site to make sure to do the inspection because we have to see and verify things. Also, there's enhanced treatment units that also have to be pumped out during if there's a property sale. Normally, you don't do that because people have contracts to do maintenance on them. So let's see. So components of this, here's some more components of the septic design. Read the permit and design, follow the permit and design, the application, site evaluation, septic design, permit, specific specifications, typical drawings, cross sections. That's all important when the contractor's building it to make sure they have all that. They can order the materials, get the correct amount of sand or fill or pipe, what have you. Okay, aspects of the inspection. Okay, so basically, when someone's building a septic system, I like that. A lot of contractors will give me a call to let me know, put a bug in my ear just to I'm working on this job. That way I can know that for my scheduling that, okay, I got to set a little bit of time aside and probably like a day or two when they're ready for the inspection. Obviously we deal with a lot of contractors and, I've done thousands of septic designs since I worked here. So there's, multiple jobs going on at once. Yeah, so and also never cover it over before the approval is given. It includes that includes the pipe going from like the house to the tank or and as well as the perforated pipe like in the septic itself. Um, Also, inside a septic tank, the tanks we put in nowadays for our two-chamber tanks, there's basically a wall in there with a slot cut in there, and that helps keep the solids up in the first compartment. The second compartment will be mostly water, but there will be some solids in there. And this effluent filter catches those particles so they don't go out to your septic system and plug it up there. Basically, a cheap insurance to put in there, put them in there. To help maximize the life of the septic system. Okay. All the components of the sand filter and DMAT. So basically, this is typical for the soils around here. I mean, there are some good soils here in Hector, but a lot of them are, poorly drained. So the sand filter, there's two components. There's a sand filter itself and also what they call a downstream absorption trench system. And basically what that does is it gets rid of the water after the sand filter into your topsoil and also some fill. You cannot daylight a effluent from a sand filter or any septic system to the surface. That infringes on the DEC. They have speedies permits for that. So the health department came up with this, design after the sand filter to get rid of the water so it doesn't conflict with the DEC regulations. Okay, so a raised fill system is basically you're building a leach field on top of the native grade. So the contractor will haul in, typically some sand and gravel, small gravel. And they put the leach lines in that. And then before those are all covered over, I'll go out there and inspect it. Okay, so the aerobic treatment units are basically a glorified air pump. So basically inject air into a tank, and there's also some other things in there as well, but I won't get into too much detail. But basically the aerobic bacteria is more efficient at breaking down waste than anaerobic, which is a typical septic system. Usually has anaerobic bacteria. So there's also maintenance on that. You have obviously moving parts and so forth. So there's vendors that actually have or you can get a contract through, they'll come out and do inspections and do any repairs as necessary on the system. Um, Privately designed septic systems require watershed and engineer inspection. So basically, if an engineer designs a septic system and it goes sends it to our office. We permit the septic system, but the engineer should go out there and also do an inspection because it's their design. And then they'll send a letter indicating that, hey, everything's good to go here. We put it in our file. I also like to go out too, just to get the measurements and so forth. So that way we have two sets of eyes in there. Okay, these are these alternative technology aerobic treatment unit. Um, they're basically they have different vendors that actually manufacture these things. They're rated for gallons per day. Typically, you put in, the most common one is like a 500 gallon per day. Excuse me, aerobic unit. And then, then you could, we have, I mean, I won't go into a lot of detail, but basically we use those mainly on restricted lot sizes down close to the water and so forth. They have to meet NSF class 1 standard 40. They have to be approved by the New York State and the New York State DOH. The people also have to make sure they have a service agreement with the manufacturer approved representative to make sure that these devices are functioning correctly. There's also audio and visual warning devices on them. And like I mentioned earlier, no service discharges. That requires a speedies permit. Here's an example of one. A couple of manufacturers, there's Piranha and also White Knight. There's other ones too now, but here's a example of the tank. You can see how it's kind of laid out. Okay, these gravelous dispersion. So basically, these are like an enhanced leach field. Basically, these these mats here, and then this round one too is it does the same thing, but just a different shape. They basically provide an area where bacterial growth can flourish and take care of the waste. Here's some other ones. Here's um, peat systems. I've only seen one or two put in around here. I mean, when you design these septic systems, you have to think about maintenance on them. If you make them too cumbersome, obviously they're more expensive, and also you want to put in a good system, but also you don't want to go crazy like over designing things and where it could be a maintenance nightmare. So these they do work, but they're maintenance intensive. Um, okay, we talked about sand filters a little bit. You have to use specified sand for these sand filters. You just can't use road control sand. There's certain grain sizes and so forth that need to occur in the sand. Here's some manufacturers of the sand and gravel, Austin's and the University, and also Edgers. Okay, local alternative systems. So we have what we had to do is for the New York State DOH, we had to come up with a kind of like a boilerplate septic design for, I guess you can call it the poorly drained soil. So we actually have engineered plans that are typical drawings of these sand filters based on um, number of bedrooms and so forth. And so we have to maintain those with the health department just to make sure there's no changes with with the regulations that they dictate. So we have basically three of these designs. We have sand filter to the downstream modified absorption trench system, raised fill systems, we talked about earlier too, and also an aerobic unit, which is an ETU to a dispersal system, basically a little gravel fill system. Or I'll call it a raised fill after the ETU. Okay, so the waiver, so that this is required for any new construction that we talked about earlier. It fits all the standards of 75A. You have to make sure you have to have separation distance, so forth. Like I mentioned earlier, just now that we had to go through the DOH over in Hornell. So basically, yeah, and also too, when we go out there and like any septic design, we have to make sure that one of those, if it's a specific way, will fit the property, and they always do on new construction. Um, so I talked about this earlier. We have a contracted engineer for the watershed office. And the engineer submits plans to the watershed for review. Watershed issues the watershed permit if it's a private engineer sending us plans. Okay, a little bit about water supplies. They're regulated by the Public Health Law Appendix 5B. We have I mentioned earlier, we have the permit. We also when we permit the well site approval, that comes with a water test total count from E. coli as part of that. And also when Jason issues his building permit, that part of the building codes, you have to have potable water for residents, so that when they get that, they can say, okay, here you go. So he knows. Now, say what happens if you have to drill a well and you can't get at the separation distances? That happens a lot, like over in Tyrone and Orange, over in the Mokelweenie Lakes, or over in Cuda on Little Lake. The DOH has to issue that waiver. We cannot do that. So. And also we talked about the grant. So here in the town of Hector, it's limited to lake properties within 250 feet of the lake shore. In the future, if they have more rounds, maybe they'll change that. Don't know. It's up to them. But for now, 250 feet of Seneca Lake, you need a replacement septic system. You're eligible for funding.
How much funding?
50% up to $10,000. So if it costs you 20, you get 10. So. And that's only for, I mean, if you say, for instance, you also needed like, besides a whole new septic, like a new tank or something, that this grant covers that as well. But it's got to be for an existing septic system. I can't, it's not for new construction. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
They did that.
Yeah.
How do you apply for that?
We just call our office and we have applications. And then, the process, you have to basically fill out the application, and you have to get three, basically you get quotes, and whoever, is the winner, basically. You put down how much it's gonna cost the project and so forth, then we'll sign off on it. Contractor will build it, we'll go back out there and inspect it. Okay, good to go. Then we can issue the county will issue the funding after everything's approved and so forth. And that,
Usually pays the tank.
yeah, you can have,
Then you got.
yeah, you can have the funding go to the contractor or the homeowner.
Right.
The reimbursement, it's up to you, so,
So you fund it and then you get reimbursed.
yeah, pretty much, yeah. Yep,
Question regarding that 250 feet.
yeah.
We have a cottage, it's up on the cliff. Is it 200, how is that 250 feet
Straight line distance, basically,
straight line
yeah.
from the water?
Mhm.
So it'd be straight up the cliff and then back to where.
No, this is basically on a map, straight line.
Straight line through the cliff.
Yeah, I mean, because it's, I mean, how do you gauge, when you have vertical everything? So you basically, you take map view. Okay, my cottage is here. As if it's within 250 foot of that line on the map, you're good.
As the crow flies.
There you go. Yeah,
So
yeah. So, yep.
You ever had any future grants for other areas?
Well, we don't, basically the state says, okay, you want this grant? Here you go, here's the money. So they basically, allocated, I mean, Yates County's got it, Seneca County, Tompkins, around the, yeah. Yeah, so they had these different rounds, so when it's passed, in the state legislature, the government will sign, okay, yeah, you can have this funding, they get millions of dollars, but then they gotta break it up between all the counties. And that's based on, and then they figure, okay, what watershed is in really need of, yeah. So, initially it was basically over Lamoka and Juanita Lakes, because all those cottages are right on the water. So then they still have that one, but then they said, okay, we'll include Reading, Hector. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I put, I suggested, but it's up to them basically. So,
No, local, mostly all algae system. No.
yeah, there, I mean, over there you have, if you're within that, the criteria there, you basically, a lot of places you have to put like some kind of fill in and stuff because there's high groundwater, poorly drained soils, things like that. Elgins and fill, okay, aerobic units. Yeah. All right. Well, there we go. Okay, so how do we become effective at this, with this, all this watershed stuff for the septic systems? Well, you have a good relationships with contractors, code enforcement officers, obviously homeowners. The regulators are the code enforcement. Designers, I design, but also there's also other engineers. So we all have to work together to try to make sure these projects run smoothly. Everybody wants to have a good experience when they build a house, so we all work together. Especially here in Hector, we have a good relationship with Jason and town members and so forth. So. Okay, here, I already kind of explained some of this, so, who are the partners, the public landowner, taxpayer, designer, watershed or design professional, regulators, and also when new construction, you have to work with, besides code enforcement, emergency management gives you your 911 numbers, town boards, highway departments, utility departments, contractors or excavators, well drillers, and building contractors. Okay. So septic maintenance, I just threw this in here today. So what do you do when you have the septic system built? What's the game plan? Um, we recommend pumping them every 3 to 5 years. Obviously, if you have a family, you don't want to go too long after, you don't want to go greater than, 3 or 4 years because obviously the more waste you put into the septic system, the more taxing it is on it. Um, so it's part of a maintenance schedule like anything else in your house. We talked about those effluent filters earlier. Basically, they're a filter that slides in and out of the outlet side of the tank. There's like a what they call a sanitary tee, and once a year you should take them out, hose them off over the tank, stick them right back in. It's that simple. Um, Also, do not run heavy equipment or vehicles over the septic area. You get compaction, you get break pipes, things like that. You change the perk rate on the material, your septic can start backing up. And also do not plant trees or bushes next to or in the septic area. I see that many times. I cringe when I go by there and people are like, they're wanting to do it. I warn them every time we do these things, contractors warn them, I warn them that don't do it. So what happens is the roots get in there, they love life, all the water, nutrients, they plug everything up, and then you're basically ripping out stuff and have to build a new one. Questions or comments?
How much is the site evaluation for new construction?
Okay, so if we're,
Or
no, so basically, if you have a new lot, there's nothing on there on the lot, you need a well and septic system. The septic design, me going out there, the contractor or the engineer going out there, my time designing it, that's $850. Okay. The well permit's $100 and that gets you that water test too. The permit's good for 1 year and after that you can renew it. So if you don't build your house within 1 year, you can renew it. So. Yep,
and then the septic permit, is there a septic permit too, or?
that's part of the
That's-
850. Yeah.
You mentioned, property transfers and refinancing
Yeah.
are only subject to septic tank inspections if the lending institution
Or
requires.
the lending institution, or if the parties that are signing the contract together want it.
Right.
Yeah, but
Basically, you could work around that if you just said.
if you're buying as is, you don't want any inspection, then we don't do it, no. Yeah.
That's kind of a loophole that has some fuzzy edges.
Well, I mean,
Anytime there's in my eyes,
yeah,
anytime there's a property transfer, the money changes hands.
yeah.
The thing should be inspected.
Well, we tried that once before and then people didn't want to do it, but
No, sure.
but then again, they're taking the cost on it's their liability because if the thing goes into failure, that they don't have, with that inspection, you have a bargaining chip too. You say, oh, the system's shot, okay, seller, knock off off the price.
That's the argument, but on the other hand, there's
Yeah.
a lot of people coming up and say, hey, that a lot of money,
Yeah.
they can afford to do the site system, and it's just mows the word.
Yeah, but you also got to think about it too, is a lot of people are coming up here buying these older places and they're ripping them down, building new ones, so they have to get that septic inspection that way too. So.
If you guys keep copies of households.
Okay.
Things happen.
Yeah. Yeah, we're having a storm or something.
Very.
I don't know, so.
So I'm thinking about a house that sold that did not require the inspection, and then the person who bought it owned it for 5 years and didn't even know didn't know where the septic system was or anything like that. Is that something that you guys keep copies of?
Yeah, we have
or,
records. Yeah. Yeah, we have there's gotta be probably 10,000 records we have or something like that, a lot, multiple cabinetfuls. And we also have them electronic now, although they're all scanned now too, so.
How about that?
19. Probably, well, one of my predecessors, Jim, he was there in 1973. He started, I think it was. So we have some probably from some notes probably from the late 60s. Not very much, but mostly from when the watershed started, early 70s. From then on, we have them. Yeah.
So does that mean for each property in the county that has a residence, that you have a record?
I'll say almost all of them. There are some places that we've never been to. They've been in the family's hand for generations.
But it hasn't changed
Correct.
in a way that it would get.
Exactly. And so we typically, we're not gonna go unless like it doesn't pertain to this town, but over in Lamoka and Weeda Lakes, they have an inspection program. Every 5 years, they have they have to have their septics inspected. We do that. Cuda Lake, they have a program too. We do that. So, but typically we've gone through at least once cycle already as far as replacing septic systems, but there are some places that we've never been to. Yeah.
Or you might have covered this, but how much is it if you just want your septic system inspected?
Okay, for replacement septic system?
No, or
Okay,
just a bit, 'cause I purchased without septic inspection,
Mhm.
and I kinda wanna know,
okay, so if you just wanna have it inspected for the sake of having it inspected,
yes.
well, you're gonna have in probably $350 for the pumper. And then, if we go out there and generate some kind of document, it's $145. Yeah,
Hypothetically, if you find something you don't like. Then that landowner could be forced to do
Yeah.
more things because then they would be on the record. or
Y-
they
y-
don't.
yes, so, well, you're talking maybe like, if we get a complaint or something like that from like a neighbor, then we go out there, what we'll typically do is do a dye test. We'll flush the dye down. First we'll generate letters and so forth, send it to the people. They contact us, we'll go out there. We'll send the dye down. We'll do visual inspections when we're putting it down. Because obviously if you see a massive puddle out with the septic, there's a problem. So, but we'll put the dye down and then verify dye. And then we'll have, a lot of times the contractors will actually find the problems. Because they first people that call, people usually are a contractor say, yeah, I'm having a problem. My toilets aren't flushing. So then a lot of times the contractors go out and they're like, this thing's flooded. We gotta get, and then they'll call me. So, yeah. Yeah.
Bro, have you done any work or heard anything from USDA about loans for rural communities?
No, there have been, in the past, we got grants from Arbor Development. They went through the county, and that was for people who can't afford to replace their septic systems. There was funding available. We would go out there and design and replacements and so forth. Trying to think, but as far as US, no.
Are septic systems ever grandfathered in terms of the space that you would have, like with a cottage in the lake?
So I mean, like say for instance, down here in the lake, if the septic system's functioning, meaning it's not discharging to the lake, it's kind of coming up on the ground, and everything's flushing okay. Then there shouldn't be a problem, but the problem occurs when the toilets aren't flushing, you start seeing stuff break out on the ground and so forth. As far as grandfathering, there's no real grandfathering unless, like I can go through an example for a property sale. So if the tank size is within 250 gallons of the minimum, and it's a concrete tank, steel tanks are junk, we're getting rid of those. But if it's with 250 gallons of the minimum, meaning a 1, 2, or 3 bedroom, a new construction is 1,000-gallon tank. If you got a 750 there, we'll let that, as long as it's in good shape, that's okay. And if the septic system's functioning, it's not overflowing, going all over the place, then it passes, okay? Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Well, you'll have to reconnect to the Zoom thing.
I've got,
You got it on
and
there?
then, yeah, so just mute yours. Stop share.
A camera, the new ones have a.
Okay.
If you want to share your screen, it'll be on.
All right.
Well, you know,
All right.
Okay, everybody, we're gonna get started. Our next speaker is Hector's very own code enforcement officer. He's gonna talk to us about floodplain building regulations, outdoor building regulations. Jason.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me all right? All right. Okay. All right. So thanks for coming out tonight. Got a good crew here. So like Daryl said, we work together a lot. We partner on every new build that goes on in the town of Hector. So we work together at least a couple times a week.
Sorry, Jason, can you share your screen so it'll be on the Zoom recording for people who watch it in the future? Escape and then do it. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Posterity thanks you, anyone who's watching this later. Very great, thank you.
Great. So, all right, our mission is really to protect public health and safety, encourage voluntary compliance. You'll hear me talk a lot about voluntary compliance throughout this presentation. It's if we can't get someone to voluntarily comply with code or other building regulations, it's off to a bad start. So it costs the town, the taxpayers, everyone a lot of money and a headache. So we've really been working to develop partnerships with contractors, homeowners, community members Is if we can achieve voluntary compliance, things are going to go much better. And we really, we want our office to be a support for the community as well. We're open. Don't be afraid to call us, ask us to come out for a site visit. If you have a question, if you started a project that you think didn't require a building permit, you open something, move something, you're like, oh shoot, it's going to. Don't be afraid to call us. We don't want to be an adversarial office. We want to be there to support the community and help you guys get into compliance. So some of the ways we achieve voluntary compliance are through community engagement. We're sharing best practices. We're educating homeowners, especially our contractors. And we're going out to the site for those calls that might seem silly, or there's no silly question. Don't be afraid to call us. I just all right. So
Try hitting from current slide and see what happens.
that's it.
Top left.
Click it forward and see if
It is.
if you go back to share, click escape. And go to share again and see if you can share a different, maybe you share a frozen screen somehow.
Okay, I'm gonna. All right.
It's at the top now. For some.
Okay.
See it at the top of your screen now. I don't know.
Okay. All right. I apologize for technical difficulties here.
Don't worry about it.
And sorry for all the icons on my screen there.
That's a very busy desktop.
All right, let's see if this works.
That's better, yeah.
Okay.
Great.
All right, that seems better on my end too, so. All right.
Fancy
Good.
too.
All right. So like we said, protect public health and safety, encourage voluntary compliance, and support informed decision-making. So I just talked a little bit about community engagement. But we really want to be here to support our community. We don't want to be adversaries. I know sometimes code enforcement is the least liked person in the county, except for around assessment time. So we like to work with our contractors. We don't want to make anyone feel silly for a question. No matter what it is, don't be afraid to reach out. So how we work. We collaborate with homeowners and contractors. A lot of what we do are conducting site visits and doing inspections. Some of the site visits that we're going to be doing, depending on the scope and the size of the project, are a pre-site visit or a site visit before the building permit's even applied for. We're looking at the site, making sure things make sense. We're talking about the home location. We're making sure that they've been in contact with Schuyler County Watershed to get things in motion with their septic permit. Some of the other things we'll be on site for are like anytime something's going to be covered up, for example, like before concrete is poured, before insulation is covered. So it's really to make sure those items conform with the design packet for the home. Some of the other things we do are coordinate with county, state, and federal agencies. Some of the most common agencies we're working with are Schuyler County Watershed, Schuyler County Emergency Management, New York State DEC through multiple offices. If we're working on something flood related, we're working with the Elmira office. If we're working on something spill related or something else, we're working with the Avon office. So floodplain administration. I won't get into all the weeds of it. We've got an expert on floodplain in the back there, but so any new construction within a MAP floodplain area requires a floodplain development permit in addition to the building permit. So that's providing additional information. We're working to make sure that an engineer or architect has really they have the elevation correct, that any floor is minimally 2 feet above the 100-year flood mark. And fortunately, we don't have a lot of floodplain area in the town of Hector, but some of the other things that we're doing, we don't have authority to regulate those areas that are kind of iffy, but we can steer people. Nobody wants to invest $250,000 or $500,000 in a home and have the area stream or have a 500-year flood and have significant damage. So we've had a lot of places recently that are close to that flood area, putting in things like flood vents and stuff, even though it's not specifically a code requirement. That's one of the things with codes is they're the minimum standard. They're not the maximum standard. So that's always, if somebody comes in and says we're building to code, we're overbuilding, it's like not really. That's, here's some other things that you can do to help protect your project, or we'll steer people towards organizations like Southern Tier Regional Planning. They have a lot of great flood guidance, and their guidance on affordable do-it-yourself projects around the house that can aid in flood damage in the future, whether it's from a ditch or the floodplain that's nearby. So I get this question a lot. What does code say? We've got a stack of books that's about 3 feet tall. So really, that's one of the reasons we're always happy to meet with people. Once you start thinking of that project and you're not sure if it's gonna fly the way you're thinking, give me a call, set up a meeting, and we can kind of see where you want to head with it. And before you invest a ton of money or time in planning something that you could have done just a little bit differently. And again, don't be afraid to call. I know that's going to be a theme throughout the rest of my presentations. So real quick on obtaining a building permit, you just give our office a call. We'll set up an appointment, or you can email. The number up there is a cell, so you can call or text it, and we'll walk you through the building permit process. We don't want people to be intimidated. I know there's been times in the past where I've applied for a building permit for something, and it's just like, wow, where do I even begin? So it's, don't be afraid to call. So we do a lot of collaboration, like I said. Some of our partners are contractors, other area code enforcement officers. We work a lot with code enforcement officers in Chemung, Schuyler, and Steuben. We meet monthly. We talk out some of the more tricky situations, and we're there to support each other. Schuyler County Watershed, we work with weekly, same with emergency management. Schuyler County Soil and Water is a great resource because they're not a regulatory body, and they will come out and provide guidance and education on site. And they're not there to regulate and tell you have to do something this way. They're going to advise you on the best practices to do what you're planning or prevent erosion. There's a great document that I think it's available on our website, but it's from Southern Tier Regional Planning. It's steep slope guidance. It's how to manage and prevent erosion and steep slope, how to develop and do it sensibly. Like I said, New York State DC, we work with pretty regularly, New York State Health Department, the Census Bureau, and everyone that lives in our community. Whether you're working on rebuilding your deck or you're building a 7,000 square foot home, you're still one of our partners, and we're here to support you and help you through your project. So our goal really is for a safer, more resilient community that we build through partnership. Like I said, that was going to be a theme throughout this presentation. If we're partners in this, it's going to be more efficient, and it's going to result in a better, safer community for everyone. I know any questions?
What's there was a proposal to add a sprinkler system to residential new construction.
Right.
Does that get enacted, or is that?
So at this point, it doesn't appear that will be in this code cycle that goes into effect in January. So there are quite a few changes. Our local Building Officials Association is meeting next month to really get a handle on what's coming down the pipe. But that's one of the things that I've had some relatively solid assurances that will not be in. It's
a huge expense, and it's a continuing inspection requirement.
Right. So, and it's our local Building Officials Association wrote a letter requesting that it was removed because most home fires occur in the kitchen. The second most common is like someone that's smoking and falls asleep or something. So the data is really just not there to support it, and that's the stance we've taken. So at this point, I do not believe that will be part of the 2025 building code. Yes.
I'd ask for a short answer. DEC and the voluntary right to farm compliance laws as far as corporate agricultural facilities, we're spreading for our watershed. Is there how are you looking at that down the road? Other than septic systems for individual houses?
Right. So that would fall outside my jurisdiction. I'd be happy to do some digging and see what DEC's response to that is. Anything else?
Hey Jason, this is like wildly off the topic, but since
Sure.
we're talking about watershed in general, and there's a lot of really informed people from town here. Have you guys seen any data around the algae bloom? What's going on down at the lake?
I personally haven't. I'm not sure. Daryl.
They usually the DOH over Cornell gets involved, but a lot of times, as you know, those blooms are short-lived usually. By the time someone gets out there, it could be gone. Yeah, no, the reason I bring it up is because, in the absence of data, like all of us that live down the lake, we're wondering if it's runoff from the wineries and the fertilizer. We're wondering if it's septic systems down there. And it would just be good if there is data, if we could get it out there.
Yeah, we typically
get involved, like in the watershed, because septic's involved.
I believe the 9 elements plan that the, it's something like 2% of the pollution is they trace to septic systems.
Yeah.
But something like 40% was the surface runoff.
Normally it's like it fosters 40%. Yeah. Storm and so forth. Yeah, so just general surface runoff from whatever's up on the hill. Yeah, a lot of times you get from bank erosion.
Is Janet here? Do you have anything to say about that, Janet? No, I really don't understand science. How they're still researching it, and I don't fully understand the cause. They think it's the nutrients from the watershed, probably. More complicated than that.
I'm sorry for the curveball.
No problem.
Any other questions? Anybody have any topics they might like us to address in the future? Could be Senator Waters to come in and talk about.
Many days becoming unusable during the summer in the algae bloom. And so if the town could at least bring in some people or help with some studies that, because it's just getting worse. And so much of the world, so much of lives, so much of our everyday water is coming from this mine. So what is the health of Seneca Lake? And at least we can't improve it until we know what's going on, right? And as a grape farmer for many years, I know that very, very little nitrogen is ever used on grapes. And I do know that the state shifted about 10 years back. If you had 200 head of cattle, you had to have a holding tank. That shifted up to 300 head now. So, and anybody looking at how they're growing corn and what it's coming bushel, they're going right up to the drain ditches. So it seems like there might be a lot of gray area, but where the nitrogen runoff is coming from seems pretty clear. And if we can isolate the real problems, and then we might be able to deal with it. But the lake is really algae blooms. Anybody living close or near the lake, I was walking around Smith Park a couple months ago and had all these kids look at the algae blooms.
Yeah, I've heard people speak on this, and it's like Janet said, I don't think people have a clear understanding of it, it's related to nutrients and phosphorus, and temperature and wind.
Yeah.
Or maybe we could have another session like this and bring in some people that can help explain it. Senator Water, maybe some other.
That would be great.
Okay.
Another topic that might be really practical would be erosion and runoff, things that you could do to prevent that, or creating buffers, like things, you know, when people are doing construction, what's the proper way? Like, what do you want to do to make sure the dirt's not all going down in the lake? That might be Jason again.
I'll just sign you up.
I just wanted to say thank you to you, Jason, because we recently completed a project and we started 2023, a little delay.
Yeah.
But we found it a very collaborative and very comfortable process to get through. I can't speak, against at all the process or the rules and regulations, because we felt all aspects of it were doable and manageable, and we're not builders. We just, private individuals building something. So,
Right.
so thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Daryl mentioned that there's a couple lakes in our area that have regular inspections on the lake. I was wondering if the town is considering doing that for Seneca Lake. having, at least along the cottage, have the cottages have a regular inspection for Seneca Lake. It seems to me like that would be.
We did talk about it a little bit, if that's something we wanted to pursue, but when we looked at the 9 elements plan and saw that it was like 2% of the contribution, it seemed like.
It's a huge.
It seems like if we're gonna
complicated-
work on something that complicated, let's find something that's gonna be a little more impactful. You know, like, what did we say, 40% was from surface runoff, so maybe we should tackle surface runoff. It just feels like it's gonna be more impact than that 2%. We did talk about it, we there.
Well, and this is just a comment of opinion here, having some knowledge about what causes algae blooms is really helpful. And I don't live on the lake, but I came from Florida and tons of algae blooms. And it has to do with, what I would learn was temperature. So the hotter temperatures now, runoff, there's a whole bunch of factors and some of them, they don't know what it's about.
And algae is an incredibly complex life form.
Right.
You wouldn't think so, but it is.
So I would encourage just, just an overall, what is an algae bloom, how is it developed, et cetera, might be interesting. Not necessarily anything you can do about it, but to learn about it is helpful. That's just my 2 cents.
People are aware that Seneca Lake Pure Waters keeps, it sends out, you signed up, it sends out a regular report of where the gaps are. So they would be a good people thing. I think they know some stuff.
Yeah.
Sure. I think it's a follow-up question. If septic systems only contribute to 2%, what contributes to the rest of it?
Surface
Where's
runoff.
all these fluids coming from?
It's agricultural.
The largest was 40% surface runoff, and all the rest of them were, I think, under 10%. There was like a scattering of maybe like
You
15 things or something.
You can read the 9 element plan, it's all like spelled out in there.
Yeah, it's actually just a chart in there.
And if you're interested, we did pass around a sign up sheet, but we could certainly send an email to anyone who's interested when we schedule the next, because we hope to make this a series, so when we schedule the next one, just make sure your email address is on this, it's on this front table when you're, if you have some cookies, make sure you're on there.
Yeah, several people came in after it circulated, so if you did not sign this, please do.
Right over here.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.